I want to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Monroe County Council. I'm going to mute myself. I've already messed it up, friends. And I'm going to turn my camera off. Even though it's not letting me. Hold on. It's working. Okay. I want to note for the record that here in the Nat U Hill, the counselors that we have are Counselor Hawk, Counselor Munson, Counselor McKim. To my left, we've got Counselor Iverson, Counselor Crossley. I'm Trent Deckard, and online I see Kate Wiltz, unless my eyes are wrong, and they're not wrong. And Counselor Wiltz is with us. All right. So council members, let's go to item number 2, our Pledge of Allegiance. Let's go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, counselors. Take a look at item number 3, our agenda adoption. Is there any amendments to tonight's agenda? See a note here. Is that anything?
Oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. Yes, I reached out to staff about some changes that needed to be done to the June 25th minutes, and they were able to get that.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Michelle, you had something also?
Yes, I wanted to note on the consent agenda under the public defender item, it is a request to add additional or to add account lines, but after talking with the department and everything, we also need to simultaneously amend the salary ordinance so that these positions can be paid out of that fund. So not only, so that will require, I didn't know if you wanted to leave it on the consent agenda with that amendment of amending the salary ordinance, or if you wanted to just keep it in there.
Okay, counselors, do you have a strong preference? If not, I'll keep that on the consent agenda. Okay? All right, we can keep it to the consent agenda. Okay. Anything else? Seeing none, let's go to adoption of the agenda we have before us. Any further discussion on that? We good? All right, let's go to a roll call vote since we have one remote today on the agenda.
Counselor Hawk?
Yes.
Counselor Iverson?
Yes.
Counselor McKim?
Yes.
Counselor Munson?
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz?
I vote yes, but I can't turn on my camera, so I'm working to try and fix that.
Okay.
All right.
So because she's not visible, we can't accept her vote.
Okay. All right.
Counselor Crossley?
Yes.
And Counselor Deckard?
Yes.
Motion passed 6 to, I'm having a brain fart.
It's 6.
6. Yeah.
Oh. All right.
I'm just
Next,
having
we'll
a brain
go
fart
to
here.
item 4. This is public comment. This is agenda items that, or pardon me, public comment for items not on the agenda. For each speaker, there will be a time limit of 3 minutes per speaker. Do we have anyone wishing to make a public comment on items not on the agenda here in the Nat U Hill or on Teams? If so, come forward or raise your hand. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and leave this item. I think people might be pissed if they're coming in. I do want to under a good recommendation from Counselor McKim, I do want to offer the following. I know that there is a tremendous public interest in an item that is on the agenda for this evening, I believe, pardon me, item number 9, a discussion about a possible recommendation on modifying correctional local tax rates. Because of the nature of that item, where it would be the council making a decision about a recommendation that would go as advertisement to the public to then render public comment, public input, that item does not have public comment on it this evening. That item, if it should pass from this council, and I think Molly Turner King will explain this more, if it should pass this council and go to a public hearing, it will have, I would imagine, the opportunity for robust public comment. Ms. Turner King, do you want to add anything to that?
That's correct. What the council is considering tonight is approval of a rate to be advertised, not approving or implementing the rate. Once the advertisement is made, public notice will be given, and then 10 days later after notice, there'll be a public hearing at which time taxpayers can speak to the rate.
Yeah. And no counselor that would vote for advertising a rate is bound to vote for anything else in that sequence. Is that correct?
Correct. It's just to tell me what to give to the paper.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make note of that because we try to, these things are complicated. We would try to get as much public knowledge out there as possible. It's often very hard, but I wanted to be clear on that. Okay. Anything else on public comment? Let's move on then to department updates. And this is where department heads, you'll have a time to address issues or things that are going on in your department. Due to the nature of the schedule tonight, I am going to hold department heads to a 10-minute limit. And I've got...
Counselor Deckert?
Yeah.
Our auditor has a really quick update, and so I think if you would do her update first, that would be beneficial.
All right. Auditor, jump in here.
Thank you. I would just like to introduce my newest staff member. This is Aubrey DeLauder Meyer, and she is the County Council Administrative Assistant. So, yes, thank you.
Welcome. We're excited to have you here. Thanks for your commitment to public service. Thank you. Now we're going to jump over to an update from the jail. We have our financial manager here. Jordan, take it away.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Council. I'm here to provide a semi-annual summary of the first half of 2024 for commissary expenses. You all received a breakdown of all the expenses in much greater detail than in recent updates, so hopefully that might reduce some questions or concerns you might have. I'll start off by stating I did notice, unfortunately, that I failed to update the balance as of June 30th of 2024 at the very bottom of page 1. I just noticed that I managed to leave that as last year, or the update for last time reflecting December 31st of 2023, so that should reflect June 30th of 2024, so I do apologize for that. However, the balance as of January 1st was $41,639.27. We had total receipts of $113,388.16. We have had a total of $376.24 in interest, and a expenditure amount of $72,727.78, which left us a balance as of June 30th of $82,675.89. The second page, you'll see a reflection of the expenditures by category, which it kind of breaks down by line items. And then below that, you'll see I listed the top expense items. Again, I've also provided you with a breakdown of each month, January through June. And I can certainly go through any of this in greater detail and field any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, very much. Let's see if counselors have questions. Counselor McKim.
Yes, thank you. And maybe this is the wrong venue for this, but I did notice that in the sheriff's office budget submission, there were some items that had formerly been paid out of commissary that were being requested for general fund. Can you outline which those are? And
I don't have a reflection of those exact items. I know that those, I believe there was a request to try to kind of get some expenses back to where we believe they were best fit. I believe those were specific to some of the line charges such as Duke Energy and things of that sort that were more specific to sheriff side items, and that in the past, I believe those, the previous sheriff or individuals, decision makers decided that that expense, a portion of that expense, or that the entirety of that expense would be paid from commissary. And we believe that is more appropriately built into the budget moving forward.
Okay.
And we can
Thank
give
you.
you an exact breakdown if you're interested of those items.
Well,
or better, I'm sure we'll discuss.
it'll come up, during budget.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Oh, Counselor Iverson had something.
Thank you, President Deckard. I, first of all, just want to congratulate you for the transparency on page 2. That breakdown per category of expenditure has not always been there, and it's nice to see that there. So I want to really applaud you for that. And I also wanted to note for the public that page 1, where you kind of rattled off those balances, that is on page 5 of our packet tonight. So if folks wanted to follow along at home, I know this this fund has a little bit of a history to it, and so it's always good when folks are able to follow along at home. But thank you so much for providing this information, and you're always welcome here.
Thank you so much for that clarification, and thank you.
Yeah.
And then just for the record, note that Counselor Wiltz has got her camera working, and so it's good to see you, Counselor.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Miller? Counselor Hawk.
Yes, I too was a little surprised when I saw some of the expenditures being moved over into a county general fund out of the commissary. So at some point in time, I'd like to hear why it's thought it's better to come from the public's tax dollars, when right now we are supporting our repairing, we have already supported the jail and the entire sheriff's department in great sums, more than what we had in the past. And so this small amount that was coming from commissary, I think, was a way of us working as good partners. So I would like to hear at some point in time why it's thought by those who made the decision that it's best to come from the taxpayer.
That's completely understandable. And I believe, again, it was just a matter of kind of the more stable items, or the items that we are routinely having on a month-to-month basis. Sheriff Marte, Chief Deputy Parker, and among others, we all kind of got together and decided that because it's a monthly expense, that it might be better to budget those funds rather than that come from commissary. But we can certainly provide some additional information and clarity on that either at our budget meeting or whenever the opportunity might be best fit.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Counselor.
just, as you know, I have tried routinely to stay in touch, so
and you
I
have.
don't want the public to think that I have neglected you, because I have not.
You've been in contact multiple times
More
recently.
than you
We
was on.
appreciate you keeping an eye on things on our behalf. So yes.
Right. I think if there's no other questions, we'll thank Mr. Miller for his time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I had a note that the jail commander also, but he's good. I don't see him, so we'll move on past. We've also, the treasurer is here, and she had a report as well. Come on forward. Welcome, Treasurer Smith.
Before we start, people are having trouble hearing, so I'm going to ask that you pull your mics closer, as well as maybe speak up a little bit.
Yeah.
And TSD, if there's anything you can do about the volume, we'd appreciate it. Okay, thank you.
Let's do a test. Jeff Cockerell in the back. Are you hearing me okay?
He's got his earbuds in.
Oh, he's got earbuds in. How about that? Laura Lane, are you hearing me? You're hearing me?
It's the air conditioner.
It's the air conditioner.
Yeah.
But Laura, can you hear me decently?
What about
Right now.
Counselor Wiltz?
Counselor Wiltz, try talking.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
She's all up in here. So,
Yes.
counselors, literally, if you kind of look, I'm all on this thing. Put it close. The other day I was at the commissioners, whatever day that was, morning meeting, and I could not hear a word, and I was where Mr. Askins is. So let's kind of be mindful of that. Thank you. Point well taken. Treasurer, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Council. I am here actually to speak on two subjects. I don't know if that means I get 10 minutes or 20 minutes. Interest and reassessment, or not reassessment, can't even think of what I'm talking about. What's going on with the city and us versus 1A and 1B.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you really want me to talk about that, but because I did the majority of it as auditor, I thought you might like to have a very short discussion on that. I don't know why I said reassessment. Okay, I got taxes on the mind, that's for sure. Okay, so what you see in front of you are two different pieces of paper, and this is part of my public report of interest and investments, and the transparency that I feel is the level of necessity of the council to make good decisions based on how much information we provide, how timely that information is, and how relative that information is. So this is timely as of today. Obviously, the August bank statements are not in, and they'll be here in a few days. But I did want to go over some of this information for you. These are our major investments. This isn't all of our holdings, but this is our major investment holdings. First Financial Bank is where the majority of our money is. That's our, well, not the majority, a good share of our money. That's our operating account, our payroll account, our PERF retirement account, or MPERS now, our credit card account, and our savings account. So total for that bank is $65,257,028.48. You can see that operating has an interest rate of 5%. And general investment, which is our savings account, has an interest rate of 5.25%. That is a money market account. Almost $47 million is in the savings account, and $18 million is in the operating account and the credit card account, because we sweep it down for that higher interest when possible. In addition to that, interest for the operating account for the year is $1.8 million, or $1.85 million, and for the savings account is over $2 million. Now remember, it fluctuates daily based on how much money we have in the bank, how many bills we've had to pay. You know, say you buy a dump truck, that's a lot of money, so boom, it goes down real quick. So it goes up and down throughout the year. So this is the total interest as of July 31st, 2024. So we're going to skip the next one. We're going to come back to the next one. Jackson County Bank is a certificate of deposit. It's $10 million. The interest will be $565,000, and we will receive that on 10/31/2024, so on Halloween. German American Bank, we have $10 million in a money market certificate. We had $3 million. I put 7 more in there a few months back at 5.3%. That's very liquid money, and so when you see $212,873, all that money hasn't been in there that long. Certificate of deposit, which already came due on 6/30/2024. For $7 million was $376,959 of interest. Now, there's something very suspicious about the date of 6/30/2024. It was our last business day before the crash, the technical crash that we had. And so it is not been quietest in, but it is being quietest in. It is going to be quietest in the next few days, because we've been vetting those accounts, making absolutely sure things are correct. And we are having a tiny bit of problem with balancing because of all the checks that we had to reissue. But everyone's been very gracious about giving any fees we've had back. Matter of fact, they had a $20 fee. They gave it back to us. So yes, I even go down to the level of $10 and $20 to get our money back, because that's how cheap I am.
Just quick, I don't think the public is going to be familiar with the term quietus. So
yeah, good question.
Or perhaps the council.
Yeah, so quietus is a fancy word for receipt. That's all it is. Receipted in. If something is quietused in, it's receipted in. So it comes from the term quiet us, and it just means here's your receipt. It was well taken care of. Basically, here's your sign kind of thing. And so forgive me for using that term. I should say receipt. So Trust Indiana, German American is here in town, and Jean Emery is our banker, and Chris LeBeau is her supervisor. So long-term Bloomington people and pretty much all of these banks so far. Trust Indiana is run by the treasurer of our state, and we have $50.2 million in there right now. We've made $1.6 million in interest. Over on the far column, you'll see my end of year guess for 2024. Obviously, the two colored ones are not going to change because they are what they are. They're CD and it's a calculated amount. The other ones are my best guess for end of the year interest, which I believe will end up at $8.7 million for 2024. Now, back to New York Mellon Bank. You see a second securities. These were securities that were in place before I took office. There's interest rate here, like the lowest interest rate is 0.25%, so 0.25. So there's some pretty low interest rates. So this 16 million is not churning out the money as fast as all the other monies are. They're longer terms. But let me mention that. So my philosophy on investing, and this is what the county commissioners have approved: safety, which this is all really safe. Liquidity, which this is not liquid at all, pretty much. I mean, you have to go through a lot of steps to get it liquid. And then rate of return. Rate of return is always last because the first two are important. If you have an emergency, you better have your money somewhat liquid to where you can get to it. So this would be long-term savings. Unfortunately, when they were bought back in the day, interest rates were very low. I would never, matter of fact, for the 0.25% or the 0.36%, and there's a 0.375, I wouldn't even lock our money up. To me, if liquidity is above interest rate, why would you even lock it up, let alone for 5 years for this? And I don't do any investments more than 2 years. That's just my personal opinion. I try to invest the county's money the way I invest my money because I like to make returns, and I want the county to make good returns. I want you guys to have the most flexibility with interest income to fund things as absolutely possible. So as you can see, that's quite a bit of money, and that's the New York Mellon that I said we'd come back to. And they're in securities, and they have various interest rates. That's why I did that last. And you'll see for that $16.8 million, it's looking like we'll be lucky to get $150,000. But that money's very safe, and it's not going anyplace if there is a bank crash. So as you guys look forward to the budget, and I know that's what you guys are all thinking about, we really have to visit what the Fed is doing. And they did meet on Friday in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. They did not drop the interest rate. That was a surprise to all of us. We expected it to be dropped at least 0.25%, maybe 0.5%, but they did not do that. However, the chief, the Federal Reserve Chairman, Powell, says that he expects it to drop at least 0.25% in September. Now, they're going to meet 3 more times this year. And so even if they only drop it 1/4 each time, that's 0.75%. So when I did my estimate of what I thought the interest would be for 2025, what I looked at is 85 to 90% of what I expect for 2024. So 8.77 million. We multiplied that out. And that's what Bree and Kim used for your guys' estimates. I think that's reasonable. I hope that it doesn't dip farther than that. But if it does, I'll just keep revisiting and keep giving you guys, and I won't necessarily have to come up and present. I'm just going to give you, once we get established with the new employees, I had to learn the office again, right? This will just be a monthly report. We'll give it to Bree. It'll be in with her when she talks to you guys about the money. And I am extremely transparent on those bank accounts and that interest. Bree knows firsthand what's going on, and I would never have it any other way than that. Okay, So
Do we
any
wanna see
questions
questions
about
on
that
that?
before I talk about the
Counselor
second
McKim,
thing?
and then we'll go to Hawk.
So I'm sorry, can we go over the two, repeat the two numbers that are used in the 4B estimates? So we've got the first half or the second half of 2024 and then all of 2025. And maybe that's more a question for the auditor.
I think 4
She's
million and 8 million, but go ahead.
Sure. So when estimating for July through December 2024, obviously we look to the treasurer and we look at history, what we've received through June 30th. And so we've received, if I remember correctly, close to 5 million through June 30. We estimated 4 million for the second half of the year. And then as far as the 2025 interest, the estimate is 7.6 million based on the treasurer's recommendation.
And that's the 85% of the 0.7 million, is that?
It's between 85 and 90.
Yep. Okay. So 7.6. Thank you. Thank you.
Could you send that little note out to all of us, because I was trying to follow it and couldn't see it. Because one of the things I heard you say that the one that you received, and you have it down as June 30th, but it had not been equated in.
No,
So
it's sitting in our bank. It just hasn't been quite into the fund. So it's not on Bree's report to you guys yet.
Okay, but I'm, okay. That is included in our June 30th cash balance?
No,
it
it
is
came
not?
in July. It ends, the CD came due on 6/30.
Oh,
The
okay.
CDs are, most all CDs, you get the cash within 1 or 2 days. So it made it a July
Okay,
date.
so
Well,
we-
we had no technology then. And believe me, if we had, I'd have locked that baby in at 5.5% on that day, just like that.
Well, just want to make sure where those dollars were on our projections.
Yes, and they're included in the base, in this 8.77.
They're included in the last half of this year.
Yes, and that's when
Okay,
they'll be
that's fine.
quietest in. So the money never really leaves the bank. It's
Right.
just, and let's think about what we've looked at the last few weeks. What is the state's rule on how to apportion interest? We were trying to give it well, in the past, it's been given to the different taxing bodies of the county, but that cannot happen unless you guys force that to happen through like a public law somehow, however you guys want to do it. Bree and I, have to put that in the general fund. And so, and the reason why is it gives you guys the most flexibility. If there was an emergency or something and you need it here versus here, you can use it any way you want to. But once you get it in the fund, it's sort of in that fund already. You have to do a fund-to-fund transfer is a lot harder to do. So with the absence of you guys not doing legislation to force it into different accounts, we have to put in the general fund by law, by IC code.
So that's another thing we might be discussing, whether or not we would prefer the interest to stay from the highway money in with the highway.
Yeah, and I'll be happy to do any way you guys decide.
And I think that's something that's worthy of a discussion for the different funds.
But that 376.9 came after that discussion had already been opened with the lawyers, and we had already had the treasurer and the auditors, or we already had the auditors conference, the first one. And when they said, you guys are doing it wrong, don't do it that way anymore, I wanted to vet it through the legal department and make sure that it was correct before we move forward. Okay. And so, we have the money, it's just not quite as in, so it's not reflected on inside a fund. It's just sitting in the bank.
All right, we've got a long night, so.
So annexation, you have any question on annexation?
Any questions on annexation? Counselors, we good? Thank you very much.
I still intend to work on it until it's a done deal, even though so I don't want you to think I'm gonna bail on you.
I think Counselor Wiltz may have had something, but I may be wrong.
I did.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Regarding Marty's comment / question about the highway money and then, I'm sorry, I didn't have the documents until partway through the presentation. Thank you, staff, for emailing. Which part of this is the highway? How much of this would be highways money?
Say it was
So to speak?
4,000 for all of the stuff added together or something like that. Bree, do you remember?
I can pull a report and forward to the council, but that sounds about right. It's not substantial.
It was much less than what you would think.
$4,000?
Yes.
For the
Oh, okay.
So
Thanks.
it doesn't impact this significantly. And I'll do it
Got
any
it,
way
yeah.
you want to do it. However you guys tell me to do it, I'll be happy to do it that way.
We can mark that for future discussion. That's a good call. All right. Thank you very much, Treasurer. Appreciate it
welcome.
very much. Good to see those revenues coming in to help us support our efforts. All right. Any other department head updates? I'm not seeing any. We'll go ahead and move on then. Thank you very much. Next, we'll go to council liaison updates. Are there any counselors wishing to offer an update? Looking to my left, I don't see any. To my right, no. All right. We can leave that alone. Let's move to number 7 on the agenda, consent agenda items.
Council, I move to approve the following consent agenda items. The June 11th and 25th, 2024 council meeting summaries as presented. And the public defender's request and fund 1000-0271, general fund public defender, for the creation of the account lines 12-100 and 12-150, public defender, attorney, deputy senior, and to simultaneously amend the 2024 salary ordinance to add the stated account lines.
Second.
All right. Are there any questions from council on the consent agenda? Are there any comments from the public on the consent agenda? If you have any, come forward to the podium in the NatU Hill or raise your hand on Teams. All right, seeing none. With that, we will go to a roll call on the consent agenda.
Counselor Crossley?
Yes.
Counselor Iverson?
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz?
Yes.
Counselor Munson?
Yes.
Counselor McKim?
Yes.
For Hawk?
Yes.
Counselor Deckard? Motion passed unanimous.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to item number 8. This is a report from the Justice Fiscal Advisory Committee. Their longtime chairman, Peter Iverson, is going to offer an update.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I believe there is a slide deck that we're loading. Just ask for your patience while technology catches up.
Here we go.
Thank you so very much. And this is the council had passed a little document saying that we needed to provide these quarterly updates. And so here is the quarterly update, this third of the year. We're going to launch into the agenda. Oh, thank you for zooming in and letting the public read that. We're going to talk about the update, where we are now, and then give a little roadmap to recommendations that we think the public might be interested in as the council moves forward on various decisions that they need to make. I mean, could you scroll down, please? All right, can you scroll down one more? And if you could zoom in, that would be preferential. And what I want to do here is, we were thinking about chunking these up into 3 sections, but I think what I'm going to do is simply read this since it's illegible, and then ask for my colleagues' remarks. So as you all know, the Justice Fiscal Advisory Committee met throughout the summer and fall of 2023. This was a collaborative group that collected data, best practices, reading material, and more. All of this is available online for the public to read, as well as all of the CAT's recordings. These data led to a comprehensive list of 34 recommendations the council adopted, and I'm pleased to announce in this update that the Monroe County Council completed about 33% of these recommendations already. This is the third update of 2024. Previous updates can be found online, but it remains to be said that much work is needed to be done as we consider what we're going to be doing going forward. Let me pause here and look to my colleagues for their comments or other editorializations. All right, I'm seeing a head shake online as well. Let me then go through to the next section. Today, this is the item that a lot of people have their minds on. JFAC considered much of this. We considered a new jail, reentry programs, racial justice, and treatment. And as you scroll down, I wanted to take the time in my closing here. Keep scrolling, please. Down. Thank you. That as we're looking at reentry space and beds and programming space, that recommendations can be found in the JFAC materials. Simply Google JFAC Monroe County. And keep scrolling down, please. In terms of racial justice, this is something we have to keep in mind as we're moving forward. This recommendations are 22 through 24. Please read them at your leisure. We know that reentry is important, that warm handoff. There was a lot of conversation about this. Those are recommendations 9 through 16. We will be considering those as well as we make fiscal policy. Scroll down. And finally, there's been a lot of talk in the community about treatment options that exist that we're currently working on, but treatment options that we are also striving toward so that our community can be able to treat those with substance use disorder and or mental health diagnoses. Those recommendations are 25 through 29 in the JFAC report. So that concludes my report to the council. And I'm very happy to announce that the council has already completed 33% of those recommendations.
Thank you, Councilor Iverson. Any questions for Councilor Iverson before we move on to the next agenda item? Thanks again to the JFAC members who have been diligent in this process, giving these updates when sometimes those updates were a microphone into a quiet room, which is never easy for anyone. But thank you for that, because that is keeping this council moving towards meeting our goals. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much again. Let's move on to item number 9. And this is a discussion among the council for a possible recommendation on modifying the correctional local income tax rate. And it's a discussion that follows up from our previous work session where we discussed options for us to figure out how we might go about our portion of duty with this. And so I'm going to open this first with Ms. Turner King to kind of help us set the place that we're at.
Should I make the motion?
Oh, I got a motion I've ignored. Go ahead.
Council, I move to open for discussion and possible recommendation on modifying the correctional local income tax rate.
Second.
All right. Thank you very much. Ms. Turner King.
I believe it was the meeting on the 16th of August that council decided that they would like to try to move forward with that first timeline, which was to have a public hearing on a proposed tax rate on September 16th. So in order to do that, the council has to identify a rate that needs to be advertised, and the advertisement has to be published 10 days before the public hearing. So if the goal is to have a public hearing on September 16th, the latest we could get publication to, we'd like to submit to the paper so that the notice can be published on September 4th. And so the discussion tonight is to kind of gauge what rate the council wants in that advertisement that's going to go to the paper and be published for that hearing to take place on the 16th.
Okay. Is that it, Ms. Turner King? Thank you very much, and thanks for the timeline and getting us to this point. Counselors, I'm going to open this up to you all here in a second, but one of the things that we have said is the determination in this meeting is not, legally we cannot adopt a rate today, but the determination what rate we might tell to the public that we are considering for adoption so that we can get their public comment. One of the issues that we've had all in this process is there's a lot of big, as I often say, muddy parts, and we need to offer something specific so that the public can comment on that and the council can consider it for action likewise. And so with that, I'm going to open this up to council discussion on potential rates or discussions. I'll also mention that should we have ready this evening to offer, Ms. Turner King has kind of thought about what form that might take in a resolution that would then precede that advertising.
Correct. Just to clarify, I did draft an ordinance. I do think there's some language that I'd like to propose changing in it because the notice that goes to the paper will be the ordinance that contains the rate. So
In its entirety. All right. Thank you very much for that. And we can look at that in just a moment. Let's get counselors' perspectives. Counselor McKim.
Thank you. Since I pretty much made my position clear at the last meeting, I figure I would lead off here. But my position on this is that building a new jail is the top priority within this project, even more so than co-location. And I'm not saying that I don't think we should co-locate the facilities, but they don't have to both be bonded day one. That the situation with our current jail is urgent, and so we need to move forward in a timely manner that reflects that urgency. That neither the ED lit that's the economic development lit at the current rate that's determined by the city of Bloomington, nor the corrections tax at the 0.2% rate are enough to fund the entire project. And so ultimately, if we do co-locate or do even other kind of similar project, ultimately both would be required to do what we need to do. In fact, the corrections tax is likely to fall short of the full cost of the jail even by itself. But remember that the corrections tax is a tax in which we control our own destiny, unlike the ED lit that's controlled by the city of Bloomington. I think we should move forward in advertising a corrections tax rate for a public hearing. And unless I'm convinced otherwise by the comments here, I think we should advertise 0.2%. I'll leave it here for the moment, but we can also discuss what would happen with the ED lit here in this discussion if anybody else wants.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor McKim, for making a discussion and an offer. I've got Counselor Iverson and then Munson.
Thank you, President Deckard. As I've been thinking a lot about this clearly I have been administrative chair of the Justice Fiscal Advisory Committee, and that committee views what we're doing with justice in this community as in a holistic way. It is important to think of this corrections tax not only as turrets in a secure facility with a severe number of beds enclosed inside and no services. Indeed, my opinion, and this is the opinion I think that I've heard from other folks as well, is that this resource can be used to ensure that we have the programming space that our current jail simply does not have. Local nonprofits cannot come into the current facility to provide evidence-based services in the current facility. It is simply too small. We also have toured other jail facilities where there are specific spaces set aside for handoff services, the reentry services, whereby local agencies, the experts in the field and content matter experts are able to work with individuals as they're exiting a facility. I think being able to have the resources available to ensure these things is going to be important in a correctional facility. That's my first point. My second point is that if you look back into our July meetings with FSG, it has been very clear that their recommendation is to set the rate at 0.20%. As we look at the materials that they've been providing, as we look at the analysis that's been done, I believe that the conversations that I've been a part of with them and the public has been with a part of them, that rate is going to get us to the availability to have the resources we need to build a correctional facility that meets the needs of this community the best. So for those two reasons, I think my position on the advertised rate is such.
Thank you very much, Councilor Iverson. Councilor Munson.
So thank you to FSG. Thank you to JFAC members for their diligent work and recommendations. And also to Councilor McKim for starting us off with the considerations that we have to come up with tonight. I'd like to make the point that whatever rate we decide to propose for advertisement be something that we know we will not go over when we have the public hearing and have the discussion, because we are tied into not raising the amount above the advertised level. So that is one reason, if we did not need any others, for considering the 0.2% for the correctional tax advertising proposal. I want to highlight what Councilor McKim said about the correctional tax being the tax that we have control over. And I think it's very important that we maintain this control because we are responsible for the expenses. And so I too will be favoring the 0.2% rate. So thank you all for your work.
Thank you, Councilor Munson. Other councilors, I see Councilor Hawk.
Yes, of course, no matter what we advertise it for, we can't go more than 0.2 because that's all we're allowed by the state anyway. And whether or not I would say go ahead and advertise does not mean that I'm going to say, yes, I'm going to vote for this when it comes down to it, because until we get some questions answered, it will be hard for me to support this. We've not decided as yet how many beds we're going to have or where the location is going to be, or if we're actually going to try to co-locate. I'm not in favor at this point to doing a co-location at the exact same time and having two different bonds going on, because we already know that we have obligated a part of the jail tax for operations of the jail. We've already put that in place, and there's already additionals being added on for this coming budget that would add more onto that. So I think we would also have to consider, for looking just at rates, last time we put the jail tax in place, we reduced the special purpose tax by 0.01 in order to allow that heavy cash balance that they're sitting on, allow the programs to proceed with the special purpose tax without that extra 0.01. And then that would reduce the amount that the taxpayer would have to pay by about another $400 and some thousand. That may not be a lot when it comes to this kind of a huge tax, but I think anything that we can do to try to reduce the burden on the taxpayer is something we should absolutely consider. So I think we would also have to advertise that reduction at the same time if you're going to advertise an increase in one and reduction of the other, so it would happen all at the same time, so it would give the taxpayer some relief. Since this wasn't a part of what I felt we were going to be voting on tonight, we've discussed it in the past, but so there's my thoughts on it. I do think I have done quite a lot of research with the other counties about how many other counties have co-location of their courts with their jail system. And believe me, it's not all counties have that. They certainly do not. And some have a more reliance on work release programs, so that if they are getting heavy population in the jail, then they could move some that were eligible over to that work release program rather than sending them to other counties. Vigo County built a jail that was too small, and when they moved in, the day they moved in, they were already crowded. And so they were using their work release as a breathing room for them, and now they've got to do something to check that. So those are things that I'll certainly be looking at before I vote to put this tax in place. But since we're up against the deadline, let's explain why this deadline is important. If we don't get this done before the end, if we've got to get it done before September 1, correct? Is that the right date? Am I heading the right date?
November 1.
No, November 1. Pardon me, got the date wrong.
Made a lot of us sweat.
We want to make certain that that revenue starts coming in the 1st of January. We have to change that in order to provide the operational dollars for our jail that's already in place, because was that 426,000, I believe, that revenue for this year. And so if we would take another 0.01, that would take that revenue up to about $1 million, which would help with operations of our present jail and the staff there. So those are things that I want the taxpayer at home to know that I'm going to be looking out for your best interest. But if the federal government tells us we are going to have to do something about a jail, we have to look at what's the best practice and how we can do it in a cost-effective manner. So that's what I'll be looking at.
Thank you very much, Councilor Hawk. Next, I've got Councilor Wiltz. Hold on a second. Councilor Wiltz, Ms. Turner King, you had a comment?
Yeah, Jess, I checked the adoption date. You need to adopt between September 1st and by October 31st at the latest for it to be implemented on January 1st. If you adopt on November 1, then it doesn't go into effect until October 1st of 2025. So October 31st is the deadline, and that's the deadline that we looked at when we picked those calendar options on the 16th.
And believe me, they don't mean 1 hour past the deadline. We saw that happen with the library. We've seen that happen with other units, and we don't want to make that mistake.
All right, now I had Councilor Wiltz.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask a couple of clarifying questions, probably of Ms. Turner King. So if we advertise at a certain rate, we don't have to, does that, if we then want to approve a lower rate, does that trigger the amendment process and the delayed schedule?
Yes. So you advertise the specific rate, and if after the public hearing that rate is amended, then you must publish notice and have a second public hearing, which is why in the calendar there's 2 public hearing dates noticed. So we're moving forward with the idea that we'd have a public hearing on the September 16th. If it's amended at September 16th, we've built into the calendars that we could have a public hearing on the amended version on October 7th.
So it's, my understanding then is that it's rather inconvenient for staff and maybe rushed for the process if what we decide to advertise differs in any way up or down from what we decide to try to implement. Is that correct?
Correct. If it changes, then we start over.
And remember, we're not working for the benefit of the staff.
Councilor Wiltz.
Was Councilor Hawk correct about the possibility of lowering other tax rates? That would have to be advertised today as well, or, decided today.
Councilor,
in essence.
I think Councilor McKim has a response to that.
Okay.
Well, it's related to probably what Ms. Turner King was going to say. So why don't you go first?
Correct. If we were to lower another tax rate, it would be advertised at the same time. Think about last August when we decreased that special lit, we advertised it in the same ordinance that we implemented or adopted the correctional lit.
I guess what I wanted to get at then is, okay, so let's say we decided to move forward with the some corrections tax advertisement. Is today our only opportunity to consider a reduced lit special purpose, or does the calendar give us enough time to come up with that number at a later date?
We'd have to in the advertisement, and I was just checking with Ms. Mosier if we considered reducing a rate. If we did that, although I know it's not ideal, at the budget session on the 3rd, I don't know that gives us enough time to have a public hearing on the 16th with the advertisement deadlines. So I think it would push the deadline back a little bit, but I don't think it's undoable.
And I just want to make it clear that almost certainly we would not be able to reduce the special purpose lit enough to actually make up for the an amount that we would raise the corrections lit. And I know you weren't saying
It would just
you're
be
just trying to do what we can.
400 and some $1,000. It would just be enough for them. But I don't want to do this because we haven't discussed it with them. So, I mean, this is something we did last time. I thought some of us at least thought that we would try it again because they're setting on more cash than what they need to operate. I'm not saying take anything away from them. And remember, we still have full authority. We don't need the city's authority. It's our authority. We can raise it up to 0.25. We wouldn't, hopefully, but we could. So we're not taking away anything from them. We're just reducing the cash in their balance that they don't really need. But I wouldn't want to do it without discussing it with them.
I agree. I have a clarifying question before I go to Councilor Crossley. And the clarifying question is this: if the council would advertise at a rate such as what Councilor McKim has offered, there's nothing to say that this council later could not reduce the other rate separately. It's just a convenience to us to try to do that together.
Well, I thought
I'd have to check because I think there's there's a rule that allows one
move in a year?
Correct.
Okay.
And so I can check because I know last year when we did it, edit, that's the year that the city increased edit and we changed the special rate and correctional. And those two did not count as, it was okay that those were two separate actions. But and that was because edit is for the local income tax committee, and this is a sole council decision, so I'd have to check to see if that is one movement or two.
But simultaneously with that, I mean, January of 2025, the council could also reduce that then. I guess my point before we go on to Councilor Crossley is I want to make sure that the need to advertise maybe doesn't get overshadowed by some of this that I think we can do at some point if we didn't do it tonight. And if we don't have it ready tonight, it's not ready tonight. So that would be the issue. Councilor Crossley.
Thank you. I don't say this often, but I will go ahead and say it. I definitely wholeheartedly agree with a lot of the things that Councilor Hogg said. As I've been on this council since December of 2021, and there has been lots of thoughts that I've had that have evolved since stepping on here. What I would like to first and foremost say is that I do think that we need to have a new justice facility. And let me clarify, not just a jail, a justice facility. For operational costs related to a lot of things, I definitely think that co-location is something that we should consider among a plethora of things with public safety, just a whole lot of stuff. And furthermore, my thought process when I've came to this council continues to be and will always be for the district that I serve. I might not necessarily agree with everything that folks have emailed about. And yes, I've seen all the emails. I haven't had a chance to respond to everything. And it's been interesting to see some of the emails that have come through, but I definitely appreciate the thought, because what we are doing is with taxpayers' dollars. So what I want to make sure that I do as counselor for District 4 is doing the most responsible thing, and whether or not folks agree wholeheartedly with me or disagree with me, that's neither here nor there. But for the most part, all of this, I'm having a hard time trying to really process that, because we don't have a location yet. That's a really big deal for me. We don't know how many bed spaces we need. I know there's a lot of wants, but sometimes I think we have a champagne budget with, a beer taste. And I just want to make sure that we are not overexerting ourselves. Furthermore, what I would like to say, and I will continue to stand true to this as much as possible, is as we are thinking about this, and I know we're trying to stay on task with the tax, but I say all this because this is what I feel and related to what I'm thinking about this tax. And again, what we all decide on today and moving forward, I know it's been reiterated, but I would like to go on record and reiterate that for myself. This is just something that we are discussing and not making a decision on tonight, period. And I would have a whole lot of questions if we had made or decisions tonight for this. But again, getting back to the point where I was about to say, I think what I really want us to figure out, in addition to us figuring out this justice facility, is the fact that we need to have a way of trying to reduce recidivism by the best of our ability. Whether that is, work release programs. Jackson County has done that. There's so many things that we can do in addition to this. I know everybody's like, well, then how are you gonna pay for it? I think the county has some buildings and some property that we are not using that we can sell. And I can think of one right now. And that could go towards affordable housing. That's one way that we can also reduce the recidivism that we're having. So I say all that to say, I'm taking everything into consideration. I'm not very much comfortable with the tax increase because I don't have all the answers. And after we come to the conclusion of the discussions that we will have here over the next few weeks, hopefully I'll have enough answers for me to actually make a decision based upon the evidence that we've heard and taking into consideration the constituents that have reached out. But again, for me personally, I still have a lot more questions than answers. I think we need to continue to work together on all bodies alike. And I hope we can do that before we have to make a decision, because I have a question mark related to a lot of different things. So I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the needs and hearing things that I agree with and hearing things that I don't agree with. But a lot of things have to come in place for me before I can make a very valid decision based upon what we are having right now.
Okay. I see Munson, then I'm going to go Wiltz, and then McKim.
So my question is whether our timeline that I cannot find a copy of and refer to right now has decisions about number of beds and the location of the jail facility, and whether this is to take place before we have a public hearing about the tax rate, because there is a lot of discomfort with the unknowns that we have on our shoulders. And we do know when that public hearing is scheduled. So can someone look at that for us, please?
Yeah, Ms. Turner King, are you able to pull that calendar document that you created for us?
Are you asking for the calendar document where we considered
The options, I think. Was that,
Yeah.
Cheryl, what you wanted to
Yeah.
see?
Yes, I think so. I think Angie Purdy worked on part of this, et cetera. We had a discussion about it.
I think the calendar that that Councilor Munson is referring to is actually the jail DLZ timeline, which Mr. Cockrell might be able to speak to more.
Yeah, Mr. Cockrell, do you want to come forward? County Attorney Jeff Cockrell.
While he's walking up here, do we have a copy that can be projected on the screen?
I'm working on pulling up that calendar option where
Okay.
we decided September 16th.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And I do not have that memorized.
I don't know.
I've got
But
the
I-
paper.
but I-
Do you want this? Paper version of it?
Well, let's see if I can get far enough with it.
All right.
As far as the location question, I think that timeline references that we would try to make that a determination of the location around September 1st. I'm not sure we're going to hit that timeline, but I think I've met with DLZ and things like that, and I think that they can still have a little bit they can do prior to being to a point where they really need a location. You know, I think you got a few weeks, not a few months on that. But that was really the basis for that timeline, is if we had the location and continuing that work forward, what would the rest of the timeline look like? So I think that definitely had a contemplation of location, not so much for this conversation, although I'm not going to say it's not important to this conversation, but I think it's much more to make sure we keep the work going so we, again, that timeline, if the public is not aware, has the place opening up by the end of 2029. So it's not like it's going to be a quick process anyway. I don't think anywhere in that timeline specifically says, hey, here is when the number of beds are going to be determined. I think a lot of the conversation has been, hey, let's get it designed, and then when we bid it for a certain number of beds with an alternative for, you know, kind of filling out all the spaces and see where we're at. But our contract with DLZ has them giving presentations to the council and commissioners at the end of the master design phase, at the end of the schematic design phase, the end of the final design phase, where all those conversations can come up. It's getting the location, because I think regardless of the number of beds that that is ultimately chosen, I think we'll want to design for the ability to either expand it or have capacity to place new cells in as we decommission, for lack of a better word, the current cells. So it's going to have those kind of design elements of where the expansion would go as well. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's helpful. Ms. Turner King, what is the date of the public hearing regarding the tax? I'm sorry, I didn't write it down.
Ms. Shell is displaying the calendar that council decided they wanted to
Yes.
kind of aim for on the screen right now.
Thank you.
And so, under the target calendar that we talked about on on the 16th, the public hearing would be September 16th. But that is contingent on having an advertised rate tonight. And it doesn't sound like we're there. So I did want to throw out that if we do not have an advertised rate tonight, I think the next opportunity for council to talk about this, or maybe decide something, would be September 3rd, which is scheduled for a budget hearing. You could do that. If I have a rate to advertise on September 3rd, that in essence means we could have a public hearing on the 18th. Originally, the 18th is not indicated on this calendar as an option, and that's because there's an RDC meeting. But I was just talking to Mr. Cockrell, and he indicated that given the importance of this, we could look at alternative locations for the RDC meeting.
Okay. So that alternative date is September
18th.
18th.
Okay.
And that would mean that we would have,
We still could still have the funding by January 1.
yeah, that's still online with the adoption for October 31st. And it gives us enough time so that if the rate is amended after the public hearing, we have time for that second hearing.
I saw Councilor Wiltz, and then I'm going to go McKim.
Yeah, thank you. I have, I think, much like Councilor Crosby, a lot of feelings on this topic, and things that keep coming up for me are the impact that this has on those in our community who are not necessarily, above the median. And we have a lot of that in our community. We have a lot of people who are struggling to make ends meet, and imposing a new tax, especially one where we max out what we can do, it hurts my heart. And so I'm very uncomfortable with it. And I understand that what the long-term finance consultants have talked with us about is the need to have two sources funding this project, and that we need to impose a jail tax. What I heard is a little bit different than what I think some others might have heard. What I heard was we don't necessarily we shouldn't necessarily be maxing out what we can do. And I think that I would be more comfortable if we were able to do a lower than the 0.2%. We can always look at it again. I think that's been talked about already. Another thing that sticks with me is that functional capacity discussion that we've had, using numbers that were not recent and looking at the recent populations in the jail. I'm not entirely sure that, given the budget requests and information coming from our consultants that says, hey, 500 bed facility, is absolutely necessary. I'm not sure I'm convinced. I see a lot of wiggle room around bed count and around the property. That's a whole other issue too. Anyway, I don't think that I'm comfortable with the 0.2%, I guess is what I'm mostly saying. And it sounds like whether or not folks are comfortable with whatever numbers, I'm not the only person who's feeling like we don't have all the information that we would like to have for a variety of reasons. That's right. And I guess I would hearken back to the JFAC recommendations that we were just discussing, and the fact that one of those recommendations calls for someone from county council or appointed by county council being at the table with some of the decision making around these factors, so that council can remain informed and feel comfortable that when we do impose a tax, it's going to be funding a project that reflects what we think our community wants and needs. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor McKim.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments here. First, to respond to a couple of the comments that Councilor Wiltz made. She mentioned 500 beds. I will say that when I made my initial statement about supporting a 0.2 rate and said that even that was not by itself enough even to fund the project and we would still need both, that was even with a 400 bed number. So I wasn't even using 500 as a benchmark. I was using 400 on that. Second, about the recommendation not to go to 0.2%, I think we already clarified that at the last, and we actually had that clarified from FSG at the last meeting. What they were recommending to us, and this actually will follow on from my next comment, but what they were recommending to us is that we not bond based on 100% of the tax capability, not that we not set the tax at the maximum rate allowable. And what that means is essentially that we bond based on we would essentially have 20% of the tax that would be reserved for bond coverage, but and this addresses comments I think that Councilor Wiltz and Councilor Iverson and Councilor Crossley have all made about funding for services. We have been told that once we've established the reserve and established for the appropriate reserve and receipt history on the tax, that we can then use that 20% that we would hold for coverage that we would not bond against. We could then use that for services and operations of the jail. So that would actually provide a funding stream for some of these initiatives that I think both Councilor Crossley and Councilor Iverson mentioned that we would like to do but don't have the money, or we have been told that we don't have the money. So just think about that. The other thing, let's see. I don't think that it's very useful to couple the decision on where to site the jail with the decision to raise the tax. The project is going to cost approximately, from a bonding perspective, approximately the same wherever we put it. I mean, yeah, there could be variations, but the cost of purchase of the land, for example, is still a very small percentage of the overall cost of the project. So I don't think that it's particularly useful to say that we need every question answered before on siting of the jail before we establish the tax. And then finally, I also want to reiterate and thank Councilor Wiltz for making the comment about having a member of the county council at the table as per the JFAC recommendations. I think I strongly support that as well.
And if I may jump in here, just for anyone watching in the public, and I'm talking specifically to the other elected officials and department heads, that's coming. That's coming out of whatever, unless the council just walks off, doesn't do anything, and I don't think that's what you're hearing, but that portion is coming. So think about that, plan for that, yell about it somewhere, but that is coming. And so that's an offer. One question I wanted to throw out, and thanks, counselors, for all the comments. What I'm hearing is that the timeline that we originally agreed to on August 16th may not be the timeline for which folks want. I am mindful of those deadlines. I am also mindful that the project, regardless of location, is going to cost dollars for some of the things that Councilor Iverson's talking about, and for the other things that have been discussed in great detail by DLZ and our other units. I guess the question I have is, if we were to go to the amended timeline that Ms. Turner King is talking about and find another place for the RADC to hang out, which sounds good to me, and I appreciate their grace with that. If we were to do that, could we answer some of the questions, and I'm throwing this to council, could we answer some of the questions on lit offsets by then? Could we commit to that as a council?
I don't understand why we're talking about changing the, I guess I missed that as to why we need to change the schedule that we had, the schedule that we had already determined includes an opportunity for a redo if if there's not a majority for support for the rate that we decide to advertise. So I guess I'm not.
Okay.
Maybe I missed something.
Well,
but
maybe,
I'm not sure why.
and I might be missing it. So if we were to move forward with an advertised rate tonight, that would then give us the ability to come back in later under adding that to the schedule to change that.
Say we move forward with a rate tonight. I would advertise it. I would get it to the paper, and it would be advertised on September 4th. We'd have the first hearing on September 16th, and that hearing would be on the ordinance specifically that was advertised. If you amend that ordinance, for example, to decrease another tax rate, then we would have to re-advertise, and potentially we built in the opportunity to have a public hearing on an amended version, if need be, for October 7th. So you could advertise .2 tonight, if that is the wish of the council. And then if at the public hearing you amend it to either a lower rate or to decrease the special lit or something like that, then we have the opportunity to have another public hearing.
So that's what I'm hearing is the, okay, well, I just want to make sure I understand what's going on. Okay, counselors, I'll throw it back to you for more discussion. Counselor Munson.
So this schedule and the fact that we can have another hearing if we don't approve the amount that is advertised is why I say we should put out the maximum rate that we know we cannot go above. Hear from the public. I mean, we're all hearing from the public.
Yeah.
Extensively about this, but hear from the public specifically about the tax rate at the public hearing, make our decision, and if we change it, we have time to do that. But I want to hear formally from the public. I think that's very important to all of us. And I mean, this is something that has to be done so that we can move on with the other decisions that we have to make for this project.
Counselor Hawk.
Well, if I understood Council Attorney correctly, she was indicating if there was an amendment when it came back, in order to reduce the rate for another tax rate, it would have to be redone anyway. So I'm not going to support it tonight because I wouldn't be supporting it the second time around if we didn't have that amendment after we've discussed it with the people involved with special purpose. So I don't see the point in tearing everybody up over what we do tonight if we're going to have to just redo it anyway.
Okay. Counselor Iverson.
I really appreciate Councilmember Munson's wisdom on this topic. Being able to advertise a rate this evening allows us to move forward to hear directly from the public, which is where we should be anyway. And I think that's exactly where this body should be, and I would fully support moving in the direction that Councilmember Munson recommended.
So we got the underlying motion from Counselor McKim.
Okay.
And I actually haven't made a motion yet.
It's not a motion yet.
He hadn't made had made an early recommendation. Counselor Munson.
So another thing to add is that I'm very jealous about guarding our ability to bring in revenue January 1 and not waiting 10 months. I think that's important for the overall fiscal health of this undertaking.
Thank you. Okay. Counselor McKim.
So I'm sorry, what, remind me of what the special purpose rate is right now.
The special purpose rate is 0.85%. It was 0.95%, and we reduced it when we implemented the correctional tax.
So the 0.01 was bringing in about $426,000, if I recall right. So if we did another 4.01, and if it was bringing in the same amount, it would be, getting closer to $1 million. Now, what does that do when I am pushing for that? As long as we know there's enough cash there in their cash balance that they're not going to be needing that money anytime soon, this makes a savings out of the taxpayer's pocket of that almost $1 million. So, folks, that's what I'm going to support. So I just don't understand why we wouldn't consider making certain the taxpayer's not paying any more than what they would have to.
Yeah, so what would that number be? I mean, I agree, we have a margin of error because the cash balance is so high.
Right.
And this is, just for the record, right? This has been high for quite a minute.
And guess why? We kept saying it's too high.
Yeah.
And this is the way to try to give the taxpayer some it's not going to give them relief because we're still going to be putting in more taxes than what we're going to be removing. But at least it's going to let them know that we looked at these balances and we're not going to be asking them for more money than if we've got money someplace else. That is just not the right thing to do.
And I guess I'm suggesting we could still do that today.
Okay.
But we haven't discussed it with the people. We haven't discussed it with the special purpose people, which is the youth
Their
services.
budget is what,
It's
I
our
mean,
decision.
their budget is what that is the way that they express their need from the funding. We're not suggesting cutting their budget, right?
No, they've maxed out what they've asked for and not gone too near that. Counselor Iverson, I heard your voice.
I just wanted to point out as well, today's conversation is about advertising a rate. So,
Yep.
you know,
We
we're
can change
not
it.
taking a vote on a rate tonight. We're talking about advertising a rate.
Right. We just might be able to kill two birds with one stone. I mean, I understand
I
Councilor
hate
Hawks.
birds as much as the next person.
Sorry.
Go ahead and kill the birds.
Let's
Councilor
not
McKim.
talk about
Do you have a bird killing motion next to me?
No, I mean, I would need a short recess to come up with a number, but
This council will be
if
in
we wanted to
recess
go in that
maybe for
direction.
5 minutes.
What would another .02, what would that leave them? Would that leave them plenty to get past 2 or 3 years?
I mean, that's like I said, I would need
We
a
have to
short
have those
recess to do that.
Okay.
calculation.
Council, if we went to a 10-minute recess, would that help?
That would be helpful. We have some information for discussing later in tonight's meeting, Resolution 24-18, that has the lit special purpose 114
Yeah.
fund number. And the minimum cash balance recommended is 1 million. Target balance is 1.5 million.
Right, and it's in the draft 4B 5.7 million. So
Let's,
So
We've
why?
got
have
5
it?
million.
so here's what I'm going to
5.7.
offer. Counselors, let's do our homework so emotion's well informed. We're going to take a 10-minute recess. I want to note for anyone waiting on the agenda, I apologize. This is just what it is. And again, we appreciate your grace with us. We're in recess for 10 minutes. We'll come back at 6:41. Let's come back to order. Thank you very much. Patience, again, those waiting on the agenda. This is us doing our job. And that's what you often see us do if it gets boring or not so boring. Counselor McKim, do you have any results of your homework that you can share with us?
Yeah, so, all right, if we, and this is based on a draft 4B that the council office had sent for review, and they haven't even had a chance to actually present it to here yet. So I think we'll are you planning to do that later this evening? But basically what we see here is that if we cut the rate of the special purpose lit from 0.085 to 0.04, we would still, it is a lot, but we would still have, based on this draft 4B, an operating balance of $4.2 million. And we're about to pass, or at least we're going to consider, I don't know if we'll pass it, but we're considering a target fund balance resolution later tonight, again, that recommends a target fund balance of $1.5 million for that fund. I mean, auditor, am I correct in that? Okay.
That's great.
So, I mean, literally, we could, and I'm not recommending this, we could set that tax to 0 if we wanted to for a year and still survive. But I don't think that's wise. I don't think that's a good idea. I think that would make people nervous.
No, I didn't want to make them nervous. But I also think that we're kidding ourselves when we pass something that says we want a target balance of 1.5, and we're passing something here that says, but, well, we're not going to pay attention to that. We want their target balance to be 4.2. That's, which one of those are correct? Because they can't both be correct.
But,
And
of
I
course, with
think
target
what's making-
means, we're on a trajectory. And so
Right, yeah.
we're on-
Don't play names with me. But what is the problem here is that we're trying to do it on the fly, and because you're trying to use numbers and try to figure out what their target balance would be, but that is also taking into consideration the higher rate. That they would have a target balance of that if it went at the rate that they're setting at right now. See what I'm saying?
No.
The 4B, on their miscellaneous, on their revenue, which shows miscellaneous revenue because it's all miscellaneous,
Right.
because it's income tax, they would be looking at that rate that would establish the 4B. Their operating balance would have been used by using that higher rate that's in place right now. So did you take that in consideration when you were seeing what the operating would be if we reduced it?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
just plugging the new revenue
Okay.
at a 0.04 rate in.
Okay, so it's still too high.
Yes. I mean,
You could do another 0.01 and still, they would be more than they need. And remember, we're in total control of that. So we don't need the city's approval.
Right.
And we could change it back next year if it looked like it wasn't going to be enough over time.
Counselors, let's pause for 1 second. Counselor Iverson, do you have something to add?
I do. I think this is a very healthy conversation, but I think language matters. We're not passing a rate tonight.
Exactly.
I know.
We're
Exactly. You're missing
advertising
the point, Peter.
rate tonight.
It can't go any higher than what we advertise or any, if we have,
or any lower.
so.
I understand. But I just don't want those watching on the cameras
To think that.
to think that we are making a decision tonight without first consulting the public.
We are making a decision on a rate to advertise potentially for the correctional tax, and also for the special purpose tax to potentially go down per what Councilor McKim, I think, is setting out and describing.
And I understand what we're doing, honestly.
That was not meant, I know you do.
No, it's important to kind of put that focus back there because the public input portion will be coming, for sure. So Councilor McKim, did you have any?
All right, I guess I'm going to make a motion
Okay.
that we advertise that we go ahead and advertise a correctional lit rate of 0.2 and a lit special purpose rate of 0.03.
I'll second.
We've got a motion and a second on the advertising rate. We will now go to discussion on that advertising rate.
I have a question. How much of the reduction is that from their operating? For the 0.03?
Okay. Okay. Let me. Sorry, I got to calculate here. So currently, that rate would be expected to, in 2025, the current rate would be expected to bring in 3.746819. And with 0.03, it would be 1.322406.
Why did you say, so you're reducing it down even further than what you had originally said, or no?
Yeah, based on your comments, I went to 0.03.
Okay. We didn't get.
You can argue back up if you want. I'm just,
Just wanted to make sure.
I mean, yeah.
And we don't have to, when we get ready to vote on it, if somebody says this is horrible, we'll listen to that. But I mean, I don't think anybody knew exactly what we were doing that was advertised we were going to be doing all this.
But we did say on August 16th that we were going with an option to come up with an advertised rate. And this council, I looked to every face, said that we were going to follow that option one in that timeline. And I'm trying to keep you to that timeline because there's a lot going on and we got to have a bit of a timeline with it. So with that, we've got this motion and this second on this proposed rate. And for folks watching at home, it means a rate, the correctional lit goes up. It means that portions of the special purpose rate goes down, and there would be robust public comment on that down the road.
And I just want to make another comment about just to be clear that this would not be a permanent reduction in the special purpose lit. The idea is they're going to have to live off their hump for a while because such a big hump has been built up here. And
It's the same thing we do, like in the reassessment
You're right.
fund,
It's
or in the
exactly the
health
same thing.
fund, or in the election fund.
Yep.
We move all those budgets around.
absolutely.
So
I'm just feeling twitchy because I'm not going to have the opportunity to vote on bringing it back up next time when it's needed.
You'll have to count on the rest of us here.
you can't have all the honors. So thank you, Councilor McKim, for your hard work. Councilor Iverson?
You know, this reminds us, of course, we've talked about this tonight already, but of work that we did last year, where we have worked to increase and decrease different rates so that it impacts the taxpayer. I will be supporting this. I think this is a good idea. I think it's time for us to move forward.
Councilor Crossley, thank you.
Just a couple of points, maybe to Ms. Turner King. Just as a clarification, because this is just to advertise a rate, and this is not final decision, because obviously we know we haven't had public comment. If there is any type of non-unanimous vote, are we back at square one, or can we still proceed?
On this tonight?
Yes.
On this tonight, yeah, what is the vote requirement?
I don't think to advertise there has to be unanimous vote.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
What about to adopt the tax?
Up the tax at a first reading, it would have to be unanimous. If it's not unanimous at the first reading, there'd be a second reading.
Which could happen the next day.
So
Correct.
So essentially, what it is, we had a person that says, no, we can still proceed with the hearings.
Yes.
That is, okay. My other point I'll make too is this. If we went through all of the proceedings, if we did everything that we needed to do today, just based on everything that I've heard today, I would be a no vote if this was where we are. But we're not there. So because we all continue to say that we want to continue to hear public comment, and I really think that's how democracy works. Folks need to come in and be able to say what they want to say and say what they need to say to us because this is their money. I will vote in favor of this because I want to hear from public personally what they feel. I've spent my times last night responding to emails personally, but I really want to make sure that the public knows what is going on because there's a lot of don't know that is out there or information that people feel like they don't have. And we can say whether, they have it, it's been presented, whatever the case is. But I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to hear from folks. So just on that alone, I will vote on this because we're just talking about advertisement, period.
Counselor, thank you. Counselor Hogg.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that the folks who are not wanting this tax in place at all, because some of them don't want a jail at all, what I'll be looking at is how can we do it the most cost-effective manner, and also I want to make it clear, I'm not going to automatically support a co-location and destroy our justice building and not be able to use it for purposes that it's now being used for and to extend its use. Because we saw what happened. The hospital building was taken down. They built a facility that wasn't large enough. I don't want to do that again, a jail facility. So I want to make sure that we're using every dollar that belongs to the public in ways that really serves the public. So while I will support bringing this back, I want to continue to hear from all the folks. And one of the important things is going to be, where's it going to be? Where are we going to locate it?
Okay, thank you. Other comments from counselors? Counselor Wiltz.
Thank you for acknowledging me, even though I wasn't able to do the hand thing. I have a question just to kind of check my math, and a second question for probably Councilor McKim. First, it looks like to me, from what I heard you say, that we would be reducing special purpose lit 0.055. Is that correct?
Yes. I guess that would
Okay.
be correct.
Okay, and so that then would kind of make us then effectively implementing an increase in lit in terms of impact on the taxpayers of around like a 0.145. Is that right?
Yes, just understanding that would not be sustainable forever.
And that leads to my next question, which is about, when you say that, which is about how long? And I'm sorry, I just haven't had the opportunity. I'm very visual, so I'm kind of trying to catch up on what we're thinking here. So when you say, this is temporary, I won't be around, is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 1 year? Just ballpark. I know so many factors can change.
I think it would be closer to 2 years.
Oh,
Remember 3.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
3.
thank you.
You're right, 3. I'm sorry. Council Hawk's right.
3? Okay. All right. I think I'm finished. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councilor Hawk.
Yes, as a reminder, we set the rate, but if income goes up for all of Monroe County, which we've seen it happen over and over again, so you set the rate and it still brings in more money than what you actually had projected. Now, of course, we could see massive layoffs or anything strange could happen. But in general, what we've seen every year is our income tax revenue has gone up, not down. So it doesn't necessarily mean we have to adjust that rate in order to adjust their revenue.
Yeah.
Because we would be looking at their revenue, not the rate.
Councilors, I'm hearing a lot of kind of quiet at this point, and I'll offer just some comments. I think we need to give the public an advertised rate, and I think that we have got one of those. I think Councilor McKim, with advice and input from a lot of other councilors, has come up with something to advertise to the public so that they can then weigh in on that, and then councilors, as elected officials tasked with this, can make a decision and then figure it out, as we always do. So I think that if there's no other comment, we will go to a roll call vote on this advertised rate. Ms. Turner-King, do you have what you need from us at this point?
I believe so. I intend to draft and advertise an ordinance that specifically states that we're reducing the special lit rate to 0.03%. And that reduction will still provide sufficient revenues for exemplary juvenile care, protection, and guidance, and that we will be increasing the correctional rate to 0.2%, and that increases to continue funding operating cost and to be used as revenue for bond to support a budget for the construction of a new facility. Those last bits are what the whereas clauses will read.
Is there anything else you need from this council to do that, other than us to say yes or no?
Oh, I think if you're okay with that language, then I can draft away.
Ms. Shell, why don't you call the roll?
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
No.
Counselor Hawk.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Iverson.
Yes.
Motion passes majority 6-1.
All right. Thanks, councilors. Let's go back to our agenda. We are now at item number 10. This is the legal. You all,
Oh my
there's
God.
another part to this. Let's go to item 10. This is Legal Department, Mr. Jeff Cockrell. And again, I want to thank everyone that's been waiting patiently for the rest of this agenda.
Council, I move to approve Resolution 2024-30 regarding tax abatement compliance forms for Baxter Pharmaceutical Solutions, LLC, and Tasis Corporation.
Second.
And just a point of inquiry to Mr. Cockrell. Do we need to be saying Simtra and not Baxter on that?
Well, the application came under Baxter, and the CF1 is, which is the CF1. The compliance form that we're going to look at is entitled Baxter.
Okay.
So that's why that reads Baxter.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
And I will, and I hope you got a copy of this. The packet did not include what I consider to be a key piece of information for the Baxter Pharmaceutical. What is in the packet shows estimated new jobs of 20 and an actual of 14 for an increase, for a really not, yes, but then there's the second part of that is on their other site, which also is part of the abatement, is they were expected to have 25 employees making $52,894, and they actually have 340 new employees making just under $25.5 million. So I think that puts that one in a little more context of why the Economic Development Commission recommended approval of these things. The second one is for Tasis, and they had exceeded the expectation in their SB1 by a few people, not the dramatic that we saw with Baxter Pharmaceutical. Now, both of these compliance forms did come to us late. They came after the deadline. We went through the EDC, and the EDC questioned the employers about that. I know that some of the businesses were either trying to be on, and I think there might have been some technical difficulties on their end. I'm not sure they're here. So I'm just going to, essentially, both of these groups had a pretty big change in leadership in the last year. I think we all are aware of Baxter Pharmaceuticals changes, and Tasis also had leadership changes as well. So that, working with them, they understand the timelines. I think we've corrected their calendars as far as when these things are needed. The Economic Development Commission had the option of making one of three recommendations to you. One is approve it and basically excuse the tardiness of the input. One is, hey, we would have approved these, but we think it's the council's decision to determine whether the tardiness is, and that we're not going to make any recommendations based on this, or, hey, they're late, we don't think they get it. They unanimously voted to recommend that you approve it, and they would recommend you excuse the tardiness. So that's it. The other part of the resolution is an amendment to the MOU for Baxter or Simtra, and essentially that MOU has really two different changes. One, it references Simtra as opposed to Baxter because they are the new company who are doing it, and the other has to do with the amount and the timing of the equipment coming in. Much like the rest of the world, longer lead times for equipment's more expensive. It has started out as a $41 million abatement request. They think by the end of the day, they're probably going to be well over 60 million. And so we put 71 million in the new MOU just in case it keeps growing, so we don't have to come back to you. I think the 340 versus 25 jobs is kind of evidence of that. And we also indicated that they're not all getting it in the same year. So there will be equipment placed in 3 different years, and this just clarifies that they get the benefit of the full 10 years each for each year of the new equipment places. That's kind of what we're asking and what the resolution does. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. If you have any questions for the companies, if they are here, we will have them address those questions, but I think this is pretty straightforward. I will tell you, if both of these would have came in on time, I would have sat here and I would not have asked them to be here. I would have said, look, they've exceeded their goals and that they were compliance with everything. It's merely the timing of their filing because of internal changes within their organizations that I think we've got figured out.
Okay. Let's see if we've got questions from counselors. Yeah, Counselor Iverson.
Well, let me speak to this just briefly, and I appreciate the integrity of even coming forward and noting the tardiness. I fully agree with the recommendation. These numbers are stellar. This is exactly what we want in this community. So yeah, I think, you know, it sounds like we have enough assurances that moving forward, calendars have been adjusted, leadership's aware. Yeah, this is great. People hitting their targets. That's what we want.
Other comments or questions? Well, seeing none, we'll go to public comments on this. If you have comments from the public, come forward here in the NatU Hill to this podium or raise your hand on Teams. I see Mr. Greiner approaching from the BDC.
Good evening, Council. Clark Greiner with the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation. I just wanted to express some sincere thoughts and feelings toward these companies. They've made a very sincere effort to comply with all the tax abatement initiatives that they originally set out to do. And you can see from the documents in front of you that they exceeded those expectations. There was significant changes in all these institutions right now, and that's why I think some of these things were overlooked. In conversations with the leadership, they have put in practice and in place other procedures that will help mitigate this in the future. So I don't anticipate us having to have this conversation again with these organizations. So we certainly appreciate all that they've done. And as you know, Simtra has done some wonderful things here recently. Baxter, prior to that, had done some wonderful things. TOSIS has been a staple organization within our community and provides lots of fantastic jobs and has great leadership there. So I would encourage approval of this, and we will continue to work with those organizations to make sure that we can address this in the future. So thank you very much for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Counselors, do you have any questions? Counselor Hawk?
That's not a question, it's a statement. I just appreciate everything that you do and all those who continue to bring good paying jobs to Monroe County. It makes a big difference in how our people can live and whether or not we can actually keep them here in Monroe County without them moving to another county to survive because of different regulations. So I appreciate your help.
Thank you very much.
Counselor McKim.
And I guess just similarly, what did we spend the last hour talking about income tax and how we depend on income tax in Monroe County to be able to fund necessary county expenditures, whether it's stellar juvenile services or honestly a new jail that we all know we need. So it's really exciting to see these companies continue to create and sustain good paying jobs for Monroe County residents.
Thank you. It just goes to show and prove that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So
We are.
all right.
And I appreciate very much always the resources you all bring, the connections you make, and Ms. Pearl always has an open ear as do you to our comments and our thoughts. She had to hear about an hour of them today from me, and I'm grateful for that because I've seen economic development in other communities go the opposite way, and really we've got to keep that connection there going. Seeing no further comments from here, how about any more from the public? If you've got them, raise your hand on Teams or come forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clark. Thank you. All right, let's go to a roll call vote.
Counselor Hawk,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Iverson,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Decker.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you.
Thanks. The next item for us is a request from the auditor's office.
Council, I move to approve the request for the creation of new account lines 33017, event fees, 30013, professional services, and 3500, printing and advertising, and simultaneously approve additional appropriation and the amount of $75,384.10 in the services category.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Counselor Iverson and Commissioner Gibbons, I understand.
Yeah, I'm going to kick things off. Unfortunately, Commissioner Gibbons had an appointment a little earlier tonight, and our lengthy conversation meant that she couldn't be here, but I'm sure she's with us in spirit. A week from Thursday, the Substance Use Disorder Advisory Commission is going to be hosting the annual Monroe County Recovery Summit at the Convention Center. You can find your tickets on Eventbrite, which I certainly hope you do. Tickets are going fast, as you can imagine. But what this also means is that there are expenses as well as income as the team is, bringing in funds and all sorts of those things. And so there's all sorts of things that we need to be thinking about as we're hosting this summit. So that's why we're here tonight. And I knew that there's some dollars coming in and that there's some bills that needed to be paid. So I went to the county auditor and I said, help. And she was very helpful.
Thank you. She always is. All right. Questions, comments from counselors? Counselor Hawk.
Yes, I see this as a donation account. So it is not local property taxes and it is not any fee-based funds, whatever. And so is this like if anybody at all decides that, they want to leave their wealth to Monroe County government, does it go to this donation account? If it's not, tell us how that donation account is established.
Sure, I'd love to. So this donation fund is specific to SUDAC and also specific to the opioid summit. So this will be expenses only for that purpose. It's still obviously being appropriated and we're being completely transparent about that process. Additionally, you do see the cash balances down there. We are requesting appropriation of, just over $75,000. However, as we all understand, you can only spend the cash you have. So we'll be cognizant of that as well.
Well, how does that come to be donation then? How does the money get?
Sure, it's donated funds and then sponsorships, and there's also ticket sales, which are considered a donation toward this cause as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, let's go to comments. Yes,
I just wanted to clarify this. Appropriation is not just for the summit that is occurring on September 5th. This is also for the Paint the Town Purple event. And I know that there's going to be 2 contracts paid or out of this contingent on approval of those contracts by the commissioners.
Right.
That is correct. SUDAC has been busy.
That
Yes,
was
they
the
have.
part I was asking about, painting the town purple or something, or pink or yellow.
And Paint the Town Purple is an annual event. It's going to happen on the south side of the lawn here. Happens every September during Recovery Month.
And the Paint the Town Purple event is September 20th this year.
Oh my goodness. See, we need each other.
Other questions or comments? Let's go to public comments. If you have comments from the public, come forward here in the Nat U Hill up to our podium or raise your hand on Teams. Seeing none, let's go to a roll call vote.
Counselor Crossley?
Yes.
Counselor Hogg?
Yes.
Counselor McKim? Yes. Counselor Munson?
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz?
Yes.
Counselor Deckard?
Yes.
Counselor Iverson?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Item number 12 is a request from the Aviation Department.
Council, I move to approve the Aviation Department's request for an additional appropriation in Fund 8108-0000 AIP Project 39 Runway 1735 Lighting and Signage, and the amount of $185,215 in the services category.
Second.
Okay. And am I?
Carlos is on.
Karst and Carlos.
Hello.
Hi there, welcome. Thanks for waiting.
Hey. Oh, hey, we got to do what we got to do, right? Carlos is here also. We're just looking to approve this additional appropriation for the $185,215. And the project is complete. And in that finishing it up, we found out there, of course, were a couple extra items and forced a change order. And this money, we've already received it. We just really need the approval for the additional appropriation so that we can pay out the claims. And we'll take any questions if you have any.
All right. Counselors, do you have any comments or questions?
Real briefly, you just want to describe the project?
Carlos, you want to do that?
Sure. This was a project that was initiated 2 years ago. It was the runway lighting project. At that time, it was an emergency pop-up due to our the existing lighting system failing. So this was about a $2.5 million runway project and main taxiway to replace all the underground cabling, lighting systems, and a new electrical bulb.
All right. Other comments or questions?
It's just one of those things that saves lives, that's for sure.
Gotta do it.
You know, I don't go up and down on a plane. I just can't get on a plane anymore. But if I was doing that and flying into this airport, I'd want to make sure the pilot could see the lighting. That being said, do want to thank council staff and whoever is doing this for us to show us what the cash balance is and the remaining balance available. Thank you. That's something I asked for last meeting, and it looks like they have done that, and that's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate council staff doing all those things. All right, other comments, questions? Seeing none, let's go to comments from the public. If you have them, come forward to Nat U Hill or raise your hand on Teams. Seeing none, let's go to a roll call vote.
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley,
Yes.
Counselor Iverson,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Hogg,
Yes.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor McKim.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Thank you. Let's move on.
Thank you.
Thanks for waiting again. Let's move on to item 13. This is a request from the legal department.
Council, I move to open. I have not had enough caffeine today. Council, I move to open for review ordinance 2024-38 concerning the rainy day fund.
Second.
Yeah, Ms. Turner King, this will be fresh for you and the auditor if you want to discuss this.
So I'm attempting to display this ordinance. In essence, what the ordinance is going to be a proposal from the council to the commissioners to change the rainy day code. The commissioners enact the rainy day code, but at the recommendation of FSG, council was considering clarifying what rainy day should be used for. So this ordinance change does that. Do you want to talk?
All right.
Someone read it.
Discussion or items from council. You're going to try to pull this up?
I'm working on it.
All
My
right.
computer's not cooperating.
Well, it's done a lot today, I'm sure. We'll give it a second. Take your time.
Quick point of information. Are we also doing the other resolutions that we passed today or not?
It's not on the agenda, the target fund resolution that LTF talked about, but I mean,
Okay. I was acting like we were about to pass it because we had discussed it at long-term finance today and approved it, so.
I do think you can amend the agenda and add them on if you'd like.
Okay.
Counselors, is there any objection to doing that? If we would add, I don't have the list of them. I should.
As long as it's described to the public what it is we're doing, not just the title.
Let's see.
And council members that weren't there this afternoon.
That's true.
Hopefully it'll be
Yeah.
displayed.
I'll close this window.
Oh, that's really small. Hold on. So what is being displayed is the proposed ordinance amendment to Code Chapter 270. The first change is under language that says the fund shall consist of monies received from the following sources and set aside upon resolution or ordinance of the council. And so the first change you notice in red is changing the language of county option income tax, COIT, to local income tax, because statutorily they don't use COIT as language anymore. It's the local income tax. The other revenue sources changes in that section are in 3, and it's transfers of any unobligated cash balances from any fiscal year that are not otherwise identified, and that code section references the rainy day code section. And that the transfer must comply with the requirements of, that's also the rainy day code section. And I do think it's important to note, because we talked about it in LTF, none of the actions encompassed in this resolution or this ordinance are automatic. So these transfers do not occur without council approval. And when it comes to the rainy day, I will remind you that it requires a two-thirds of a majority vote from council, so it's the supermajority. The second change is, or the additional changes are in the purposes the funds shall be used for. We eliminated what was 1 because it makes that reference to COIT, and we incorporated in the language below. We took out sudden in what is now the new item 1, because emergency and unforeseen kind of implies that they are sudden. What will now be 2 is to bridge funding gaps caused by an unexpected revenue shortfall or significant delay in receiving revenue. And those are the only changes to the ordinance that is being proposed to the commissioners. And so Bree and I are happy to answer any questions about the proposed changes.
All right, so this is for ordinance 2024-38. Questions? Any considerations? Yes, Councilor Iverson.
I had a question about the thinking on C2, the emergency clause. Given what we've been through with a natural disaster, was there thoughts about defining what an emergency can or cannot be? Can emergency be financial? Can emergency be natural? Can an emergency be et cetera, or we wanted the definition to be broad to encompass all emergencies?
I don't know that we specified emergency, but had in our head traditional
We did specify emergency, and I caution us to do so just because if an emergency situation came up before the funds can be expended, the council is going to approve that by resolution. So you can look at each situation individually and say this is or is not an emergency.
Yeah, I don't want to tie the hands of future councils either.
Yeah, that's true. They will have to do some work too, as I often say.
They're not taking it all for them.
No, we don't do their
Although if we could include the word pestilence in there.
That's right, that's
I
right.
would love that.
They will have to show up, do some work, and deal with pestilence.
Act of God.
Any other comments or questions? One thing I just want to know, all this from long-term finance is a product of that good committee. Thank you to Councilor Wiltz, Councilor Hawk, and Councilor McKim for championing this. And that's part of that effort, plus recommendations from our auditor. All right. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none. Let's go to public comment on Resolution 2024-38. If you have it, come forward in the Nat U Hill or raise your hand on Teams. All right. Seeing none. Let's go to a roll call vote.
Counselor Munson,
Yes.
Counselor McKim,
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz,
Yes.
Counselor Iverson,
Yes.
Counselor Hogg,
Yes.
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Crossley.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
So that, if we're keeping with the LTF items, this would take us to 2024-18, right? And so what I'll do is offer that.
Yep.
Go ahead, Councilor McKim.
You know, I was originally proposing considering this tonight, but given that there are actual numbers in here, the council might actually appreciate the opportunity to, since this isn't an emergency. I was going to move that we add that to the agenda, but I think I'm going to back off of that unless anybody feels really strongly, because give everybody a chance to actually look at the numbers.
I appreciate that.
That's
Okay.
a good plan.
We will hold that one. What about, there's a third resolution, auditor, am I correct on that?
Sure. The third resolution is just a recommendation made by me to go ahead and move cash from general fund to rainy day to meet the target fund balance resolution recommendation that we're putting forth. So really, if you want to do those together, we could, so everybody has a chance to review, or if you would like to move forward tonight, I mean, either way is fine.
Hold them off. We can do it. There's no emergency. All right. So Michelle will note that and get that down the way. All right. Let's move on then. Thank you. I think that's it.
So
No.
we're not voting on that then. We are.
Because that references the other one, the target fund balance.
Right, I'm just trying to figure out, we can't like say it on one hand, turn around, and say something different 2 minutes later.
Yeah.
So that will be corrected, or what are we doing with that?
I think what we're saying is take the last two resolutions, hold them for a future council meeting, and then reduce that to writing so that we've all got that's distributed.
So what was the target fund balance for the special purpose tax entered as?
It was recommending a target fund balance for rainy day, correct?
No, there's two resolutions that we discussed during the long-term financial planning committee. One was the target fund balance resolution, and the second was a resolution to move cash from general fund to rainy day, and which is also like part of the other, is they kind of fit together. So
Fulfill the long term, or to fulfill the target
exactly
goal.
So that, and so as you can see, with this form, and we voted on this, I've been going through all this paperwork, I couldn't find my document. We agreed in that long-term finance committee meeting that the special purpose tax should have a target balance of $1.5 million and a minimum cash balance of $1 million. And what we just did earlier today didn't take it anywhere near those dollars. So I want to make sure that we're not going to reduce it down any even further and put it over into rainy day. See, I think this needs more discussion.
Okay. We will hold it for that alone. Yeah, we can reduce that to writing. Okay? So item 13 is now done. Let's go to item 14, counselors.
Council, I move to approve the request in Fund 1186-0000, Rainy Day Fund, for the creation of new account lines 28,900, County Emergency Response Supplies 38,900, County Emergency Response Services, and 48,900, County Emergency Response Capital, and simultaneously approve additional appropriations in the amount of $1 million in the supplies category, $1 million in the services category, and $1 million in the capital category, for a total appropriation of $3 million.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Shell, you want to comment about this?
Yes, we've spoke about this before at the last meeting. This is a recommendation from FSG to have emergency response funds available and these are last resort when all other funding has been used up in case of an emergency, like we saw, back in June. But the stipulation is that these funds are not to be used unless all other funding resources have been utilized first. So this is your last ditch effort. They recommend that we always have these on, appropriated and ready to go. That way, if something does happen, and until they can go ahead and reach out to this resource in the meantime while we get the other ones, appropriated. So.
Councilor McKim.
And the idea is that we could then, once other funding sources were put into place, we could then rejournal those expenses and restore the rainy day then.
Correct.
Is that the, okay.
And if I understand correctly, we need to take a look at it every year to make sure that 3 million is sitting there. But the rainy day does not, the appropriation will go away at the end of this year. So we have to put the appropriate, but that doesn't mean that we've actually spent the money. This is just something that right now, it's like between now and the beginning of next year, if something drastic would happen, the revenue is there and appropriation is ready for them to move forward. We have to do it again during budget hearings, so we'll have it ready for next year.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Other comments, questions? All right, let's go to public comment on this item. If you have them, come forward to the Nat U Hill or raise your hand on Teams. Seeing none, let's go to a roll call vote.
Counselor Wiltz?
Yes.
Counselor Munson?
Yes.
Counselor Deckard?
Yes.
Counselor Crossley?
Yes.
Counselor McKim?
Yes.
Counselor Hogg?
Yes.
Counselor Iverson?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
Okay, thank you very much. Item B, 14B, is a review of departmental budget requests in preparation for our work. I'd like to have Bree Gregory, our auditor, and Ms. Shell, our council administrator, review with us the 2025 draft 4B and proposed 2025 departmental requests from High End. I know counselors will review this on their own, but she's going to take us through some of the top lines of that and answer any questions.
Okay, Michelle is going to put the 4B up for us. If you could wait just a moment, please.
Hard copies of this, please. We have hard copies of the 4Bs.
Say that one more time, council.
I was reviewing something over here. Is she going over the 4Bs?
She is going to go over 4Bs.
Okay.
Do we
And
have-
I would like to see a hard copy, please. Do we have the hard copies ready for the council?
I don't think we do. I think she's got an electronic version of this.
Oh, I bet we've got staff over there who can go make us a hard copy very quickly. That's why we have so many people over there.
Yes.
Because it's going to be difficult to follow along. This is extremely important. This is our financial.
They are. These have been emailed to us, correct? Yeah, so counselors, if you open your emails on these electronic devices, you may be able to pull this up and follow along as well. I want to make sure that we continue to keep moving so that we're getting this accomplished.
Hold on. It's harder to take notes on the email version,
Yeah.
electronic version.
I like to see a hard copy in my hand. Right. You know, like a library, I like to see a book in my hand.
Go back and watch.
Okay, great. Okay. Is it okay to begin, or would you like to hold for the hard copies?
Let's keep going.
Okay, great. Well, you're seeing up on the screen there the draft 4B that Michelle and I worked on this week. So We pulled the July through December 20. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so we pulled the July through December 2024 information for general fund, election fund, health, aviation, reassessment, Cume Bridge, which are in the Floros and Levy. And then also, we normally review the public safety lit special purpose, economic development lit, now lit correction, cable franchise, and Cume cap. So you can see that the June 30th cash balances are noted. Property taxes to be collected, all pretty self-explanatory there. Miscellaneous revenue, I do want to go into a little bit more detail on that. So for the general fund miscellaneous revenue, what we do for that is we look at the miscellaneous revenue provided by the DLGF, which is the financial institution tax, excise, the CVIT, local income tax, interest revenue as estimated by our review and also the treasurer, and then general miscellaneous revenue, which are fees we collect and other various miscellaneous revenues. So the total that we're estimating for the second half of the year, 14.5 million there, a nice amount. So you can see the total cash and revenues then for the general fund, the remaining estimated expenditures, some of which historically will revert. We normally anticipate some reversions. Additional appropriations that we have been notified about to anticipate for the rest of the year. And then estimated December 31 cash balance then with all of that information. So from there, we go down to the levy. Now this is based on where things stand currently. And we're, calculating that 4% increase. We have the property tax cap impact noted. And then miscellaneous revenue anticipated for 2025, which is all of the same as I noted for the remainder of the year, just varying amounts there. And then you can get down to your bottom line there, showing the operating balances. This is much of the same. I went through general fund in more detail just because it's obviously our largest fund. But, there's some miscellaneous revenue in most of the funds. Health, as you can see, it's another one I want to discuss in a little bit more detail. They're still sitting on a really healthy balance. They have quite a bit of miscellaneous revenue that they receive, which really supports them well. In addition to that, I had an email exchange with Director Lori Kelly, and she's anticipating even more revenue for 2025 than we estimated. We were being quite conservative here. So just want to note that. I'm inclined to leave the levy where it is there, which is at nothing if the state will allow for that, since our previous tax levy contribution as well as miscellaneous revenue supports the budget in this fund. I'm happy to try to answer any questions. Kim, feel free to jump in if you have anything to add, please.
Councilor McKim.
Yeah, so this version that we're looking at includes the updated interest on investments recommendations.
I should have started with that, and I apologize. So, yes, after the treasurer went through her interest in more detail today, we edited the number from 6 million to 4 million for the remaining months of 2024, the second half of the year. Although it likely will be higher, we want to remain conservative. So, so that was a change. And I don't think there were any other changes that I recall. So that was the one.
Okay. And then I guess this is maybe more of a comment than a question, and I wonder what other counselors think. I know we decided not to consider it today, but we're recommending a rainy day transfer out of general in the amount of about $2.2 million to bring the rainy day fund balance back up to the recommended $10 million. I wonder if we want to add that $2.2 million figure in with the projected additional appropriations in line 6, so that's taken out of the cash balances, so we don't spend it twice, basically.
Right. Are you talking about the emergency response funding? Not that at all?
No,
Okay.
I'm looking at, sorry, I know we've got so many things that we haven't actually voted on. This was what we agreed not to discuss today, but
I finally found it. I've been looking.
I want to make sure we don't spend it twice, is what I'm
Okay.
saying.
That's
So
good.
it's just a
Good plan.
recommendation to, maybe you all can disagree, but I think it in the interest of being conservative, I don't, Councilor Hawk, what do you think? Do you agree that we should deduct that, or should we leave it in there?
Well, I don't want us to spend that down thinking, oh, we've got more money than what we actually have to.
That's what I mean.
And so that's my concern. I've had a tough time trying to find that 4B email that we got 10 days ago, but it was just yesterday, but so much has happened since then. I've probably got 1,000 emails here.
Well, but now we have the paper.
Right, but now I can't see the paper. I'm sorry. I'm just going to go on faith here, Jeff. I can't see this. I can't find it here. But I'm about to find it. I think I have it open now.
I'm just saying that if we're considering transferring money out of there, that ought to be considered just like an additional appropriation that we're considering.
Right, I think that you and I discussed that recently.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think Michelle can make that update if we want to see that live, and we can go ahead and do that.
What was that amount again?
$2,227,512.
As she does that, I see Counselor Wiltz has got her hand up.
$1,227,512.
I did, thank you. I was merely saying that I absolutely support recording that into this record because of the danger of, just not keeping track. So thanks.
That's, you see the new amount right there on the screen.
Okay. And what does that bring our operating down at the end? Okay, thanks.
25 million.
At the end of the night, can you send this out to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Counselor Iverson.
So first of all, it's a little jarring to be looking at this spreadsheet as a viewer only. I really want to change things, and it's jarring not to be able to, but I'm sure we'll get there. We'll get there. The first thing that stands out to me is that healthy balance that we were talking about this evening in column N. That's $6.1 million in special purpose. And then relatedly, that ED lit in column O with a balance of $22.5 million, that's going to be part of our conversation about a justice complex potentially. That's an interesting number that jumped out at me. The other thing that I wanted to note here is I know that in the past we had talked about target operating balances as a percentage, and it seems here on line 35, or row 35, let me be specific with my language, row 35, there are some figures in there that, is that something that long-term finance suggested, or is that something that that we're, how did those numbers come about?
Okay, so that's just displaying like the percent of the budget. Those are simply there as an FYI, just so we can see where we are and see the room I guess we have within the revenue. So, well, the balance.
And just to follow up on that, and this came out in our long-term financing committee meeting earlier today, that actually I think it was Bree mentioned that FSG is recommending that we use hard numbers rather than percentages as our balance, with the idea that it forces us to update those targets every year.
Sure.
So that's kind of new. So we're sort of in transition from percentages to
That's definitely been a change.
to hard numbers.
I have a question.
Counselor Hawk.
Right, and I'm sure it's here, and I'm just looked at it the other night. I guess I was tired looking at. I guess maybe that was just last night, 10 years ago. When I'm looking at, I'm trying to figure out where it shows how you arrived at your total miscellaneous, knowing that that includes that income tax. And so I'm trying to figure out if you plugged in something for an average, what you thought the supplemental would be. I know that was something we discussed for this year's 4B. So are you saying, I'm seeing you shake your head no. So are you saying you put in nothing for a supplemental for 2025?
We did not estimate any sort of supplemental for 2025. So that's going to be additional funding that we'll receive that's not represented here.
Okay. And so when I'm looking at, I'm still looking at, on my sheet, it shows for comparison only, so much for lit and for 2023, and then it's showing for 2024. And I would think that for us to, I'm looking at it and thinking I should see what our amount is that we're plugging in for 2025 there in the white column, because we know that's just a part of the total in the green column, so that we could, I knew that was going to happen.
Councilor Hawk, we're happy to add that moving forward. That amount is represented in a note, and you see the 4B line section, number 13. If you hover over that, if you're looking on your computer, you can see in order the amounts, and you can click on the formula there, and we'll just note it above for the future. It'll be easier.
Okay.
Yes.
Just for you to know, the battery went on my laptop, so. But that was something when I was looking at it, I thought, oh, they've got the wrong year. How are we doing this with the wrong year? Because the numbers have certainly changed. And so we want to make sure that what we're looking at the 4B makes some sense. Am I the only one that thought that was a problem? I guess I did. I'm looking at 23 numbers instead of 24,
those were all
20.
just for reference. And I think they were starting with a template that I had created originally. And they've taken ownership, which is exactly what they should do.
Absolutely. I want them to know how to do it, start to finish with no help.
And they did a fantastic job.
Right.
Yes, they did.
But I'm just saying, I thought that they were looking at old numbers and using old numbers to arrive at a number, and that would have been.
They used correct current numbers. But I agree, you could add a line there just for reference, just to show what it is.
That's simple. Happy to do it.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead, Autumn.
No. On that note, if there are any other recommendations, constructive criticism, you can always send it our way. We're happy to take that into consideration. I mean, this is for you, so please, by all means.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor McKim.
And can I just make one, I just wanted to respond to a comment that Councilor Iverson made about the ED lit operating balance there, just to make sure that everybody understands that the model that FSG gave us, the financial projections that FSG gave us for the jail project, did assume that essentially that 2 years worth of payment, or 2 years worth of revenues in the ED lit. So that's not a windfall or extra. That's
right.
What's already been
That's
kind
right.
of taken into account.
That's right.
And the grounds are, that bond is already paid off. That we had the bond to buy ground.
Right.
That's paid off, and we haven't bought
But
the
we haven't
ground.
really we haven't bought anything.
So that 22, we have that, and then but not extra money where we didn't buy the ground. It's not 22 plus 10, is
Right,
it?
correct.
It's 22.
Yeah, it's just 2 years worth
Yeah.
of the 11 million revenue.
Because I kept trying to think, I was trying to add another 10 million in there.
Would have been nice.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That has to be a part of the equation, right, in our heads.
Yes.
Auditor, you have another comment?
Yeah, just one more comment. Just noted below, I have the 2025 CNAV as well as the 2024, so you can see both numbers. It's been updated.
That's helpful.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I may have more when my laptop's working again, so I'll just give you a call.
Okay. Michelle, what else do we have?
I wanted to briefly just go over a few things regarding the 2025 budget. I had forwarded this to you right after everyone submitted their budgets. And this is just a quick summary of the funds, the budget requests, which you'll see in column C, versus the adopted budget in column D. And then column F gives you the difference between the requested budget and the adopted budget that we did last year. So this is just a quick summary. You can see that for this year, the general fund amount is 51.8. And last year it was 48.7. And so there's a difference of $3.1 million. Some of that is, and I haven't gone through all of the budgets to figure where it mostly is. I don't know if it's because of personnel, I don't know if it's supplies, don't know if it's services. But I just want to remind you that we have added several positions since January, and we also have increased hours for several departments from 35 to 40. So I did also send out to you like from the Form 144s, departments that were requesting additional positions and or an increase in hours. And then at the bottom of that, I gave you the summary of what positions had been added and or if it was hours that had increased. So you have all of that, which will kind of give you an idea of where those changes are. But I have not gotten into breaking all that down by category for you for each.
And you tracked those additions over the year as we did them, didn't you?
It was, yeah, we needed to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Councilman.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you doing that, and I know you've created that list that I look forward to seeing again. But I think what one of the things that tells us is that we've already made a lot of those decisions. I mean, we don't have a lot of room for new positions that are being requested here in this budget because we've essentially we've already gone to what might be pretty close to the max on new positions and new hours that we've already approved.
What I will say is, let me pull this up. And Okay, the list that I sent to you earlier, let me get that here. Okay, this is the requests that were made on Form 140, the Form 144, and/or by an email from a department, just inquiring what do we want to do.
I can't.
These are the ones, now, we've got two of them here, these two right here, which is in the Commissioner's Soil and Water. They have been approved, but there have been no changes to the current budgets because these changes will not take effect until 2025. So, then you will also see, we've got the health department here is making changes. That's coming back to PAC. And so anything right here in this section, the only two that have been approved are the commissioner, the soil and water positions. Everything else is like on hold request that the departments have yet to make or maybe are making during budget sessions. This down here is everything that has been approved up and through including July of 2023. So, and I can't remember if we did anything the first meeting of August. I can't remember if we made any changes, but this takes us to anything that's been changed up until July. So I've tried to stay on top of that to keep you abreast. I do want to note that we do have several departments coming to PAC in September that are making some of these requests, and I want to say employee services, probation, is that one of them? Courts.
Auditor.
Highway. So we've got several to look at come at the PAC meeting.
Is there a new one in courts as well as probation, or is that the same one? That's the same position.
There
Okay. It's the same position.
But isn't there?
They have it under probation, but it's, yeah.
Now, courts is a bailiff.
Oh, so there is enough.
Or was it?
The one Judge Deacock
They
did
wanted
for in
something for
August
their
is different
court
than.
Oh,
reporters.
it's different.
Oh, it's
Okay.
different. Okay.
Yeah, the one that Judge Deacock brought forward was different, sorry.
Okay.
So that's
It's not-
on here.
It's not on there. It was
I'll
like
put that
for
one
the
on
court
here.
reporters and court whatever.
Recorder's office.
Councilor Hawk?
Okay.
Oh, yes, and we also have a request from the recorder's office that she just submitted, so, yep.
Okay. Councilor Hawk?
If I missed it, and maybe, and I apologize, I can't open up and make it work without it, it has no energy left. Do we have a total of what our revenue is that's tied, our revenue total for county general? Not our cash balance, but our revenue. And how much is that?
Second, let me pull it back up. Okay, are you looking for the revenue total for 2024 or
No, what you have to-
estimated for 2025?
2025.
Okay.
I want to look at what our new revenue is and what we've already spent out of it.
Okay, totally anticipated revenues for 2025, which is line 14, 52,100,925.
52, 120.
52,100,925.
And the request total for county general?
The 2025 budget estimate is 51,896,397.
There it is right here. Okay. Line 15.
And that does
I
not
thought you
include
could see that.
COLA anything, correct?
No.
It does
These-
not. It
these-
doesn't. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
I was gonna say, these requests do include employees moving up, the step
Steps.
increases, but it does not include COLA.
COLA.
So,
And one of the things when you're looking at the budgets, that I saw rather large jumps. That wasn't, we have to recommend that we have to take a look at. And one of them was the sheriff's pension fund, because that went up, something like, goodness, $240-some thousand went up.
Is
Look
that the
at
request that they put before us?
It's,
Yes.
well, but we didn't vote on it, they just came and discussed it.
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty big jump, and it's we didn't say yes to that. And what I'd want you to look at is what it was 2 years ago, because and I think that number's 240,000 jump from this year and proposed for next year. And the other thing is when I've tried to look at that, and I also wanted to look at what they had added then for the jail, because I hadn't looked. I don't really know the difference in that. I don't have it memorized in the jail how much they had increased. And remember, they increased. They almost doubled their request to go into the correctional tax. They put another 400-some thousand in there, I believe is what it is. So we know that has to be, I figured that out from someplace. And also, the assessor's office, as you know, we made some major changes in there because they hadn't been changed in years. And so that total, I'm thinking one of those was $300,000 for the year difference from one from one budget year to another budget year. Now I'm good, because I can't open my computer. I want to make sure I'm looking at the right numbers. Will somebody look at the, getting this number tonight?
Yeah, are we gonna, how much or more are we planning on? Because actually, I'm probably
This is just
turn into a
large
pumpkin
parts that we
shortly.
want to look at.
So these are items to consider and to look at as we move towards the budget. I think tonight is a preview of that. Is there anything else?
I had one other thing that I wanted to share with you. You're going to notice in the budgets, we have added 3 more funds for your review. And one of them is self-insurance. And that is a request from FSG that we should be budgeting our self-insurance. Again, you're going to see rainy day, so we're going to be annually budgeting for that. And then you're going to see the addition of 1173, which is a motor vehicle restricted. So what we've done in the past is we've taken 1176 motor vehicle highway and put the entire budget in that. And then the department, along with the auditor's office, has to go through and split that into the restricted. And so this way it's cleaner for them, so they can budget accordingly, and there's less, transferring between fund, this kind of thing. So this is going to be a cleaner process moving forward with regards to the motor vehicle highway fund. So I also wanted then to bring to your attention, this is what I thought stood out with regards to the budget, and these funds are asking for capital items. The aviation fund is requesting a vehicle purchase of $102,000. It doesn't say what it is, but that's the account line that correlates with it. The local public health fund, the new one, is asking for equipment of $120,000. The sheriff's fund, public safety lit equipment, law enforcement is $80,000, which is up about $60,000, I think, from last year. It doesn't, so. Fund 1197 stormwater is requesting a purchase of a grade all at $523,500. And then the West Side TIF is just to lease purchase equipment of $498,991. So those were larger than they were last year, kind of things that I thought you should,
Thank you very much.
you may have questions about or that kind of thing, so.
Thank you much.
But everything else, was like within the margin of, the 4% growth and that kind of thing. And these were beyond that, except for the salary parts where people were making their jumps or we have changed classifications or the hours, so.
Yeah.
And this is all I have with regards to where we're at on the budget request for 2025.
It's a good start. And we got a lot ahead of us to do, but that's every single year how it goes. So with that, counselors, we're going to finish this agenda for the night here. Move on to item 15. These are the ARPA traditional requests, and the auditor, I think, needs to make a recommendation for deappropriation.
Yes, I'd like to make a recommendation to deappropriate a capital line, account line 48008. I'd like to deappropriate $1,313. The last invoice we were awaiting came in under what we anticipated. So, and then that project will be complete.
Can you say that number one more time?
Sure. The account line is 48008, and the amount to deappropriate is $1,313.
1313. Okay. And what's the project?
1 second.
Sorry, I apologize, Mr. President.
You're doing great.
It's the infrastructure design work for childhood habitat. This was just the last invoice. This is something we actually didn't move forward with, but this is part of like the preliminary planning. So we have to go ahead and take care of that.
Council, I think we've got a motion here.
Council, I move to the auditor's request to deappropriate and fund 8950-0000 American Rescue Plan Act ARPA account line 48008 in the amount of $1,313.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on the item? Seeing none, let's go to public comment. If you haven't, come forward in the Nat U Hill or raise your hand on Teams. Seeing none, let's go to a roll call vote.
Counselor Hawk?
Yes.
Counselor Iverson?
Yes.
Counselor Wiltz?
Yes.
Counselor Munson?
Yes.
Counselor McKim?
Yes.
Counselor Crossley?
Yes.
Counselor Deckard?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimous.
All right. I've got one final just note, and then I'll open it up for council comments. It was brought to my attention that occasionally signature pages may have a scrivener's error that conflicts with what is presented and approved by council. If no one objects, to ensure department's requests are processed timely, the council supports the auditor's office correcting the scrivener's error to align with council's approval from that actual meeting. Any objections to that? No. All right. Any council comments to close us out for the evening? I know it's been a long one. Counselor Iverson.
I have two. I'm going to go just real quick back to ARPA. We have 126 days. In those 126 days, we have to pass our county's budget, figure out a way to pay for a new jail, and tackle whatever else comes up. We need to just focus on this because the documents that were just passed around, there's millions of dollars that are unobligated. So that's got to be a focus coming up. The second thing I'll note is that housing has come back into the local zeitgeist. And I just want to reiterate, folks, that the vast majority of experts agree that the way to get out of a housing crisis that we're in right now is to increase the amount of homes in our community. We know that at least one national candidate is currently running a 1-minute ad right now, touting a plan to build more than 3 million homes across this great nation. And we know that the members of our community are needing homes that they can live in and that they can enjoy this beautiful community in. They're not getting it. and there needs to be a change in our mentality. I look forward to future conversations to continue to promote housing for all in Monroe County.
Here, here.
Thank you, Councilor Iverson. I do want to know, I agree with both those points. On the ARPA discussion, Commissioner Thomas and I have talked about an ARPA session for us probably early October. So let's watch for that, if not sooner.
I expected to hear something positive from you, Mr. President.
I had a note to do that, and then I got distracted by the 9 million other things we're doing. Any other council comments other than I want to go home? All right, everybody good? Thank you, counselors, for all your hard work. Thanks to all of that bench over there for all their hard work in all this. I called them about every 22 minutes today. And then again, thanks for the public watching. Watch for more details on public meetings and other discussions. With that, we're Councilor Munson.
September 16th, public hearing.
September 16th, public hearing on the advertised rates, which will be forthwith advertised. Okay. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.